Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lasertech Tuesdays at 2. I'm Jay Cottrell, and I'm the Marcom manager for LTI. Every Tuesday around 2 p.m. Mountain Time, we go live for about 15 minutes to discuss solutions in traffic safety or in professional measurement. So you can grab a cup of coffee and join us for a little bit. If you're joining us live, you can post a comment below and let us know what's on your mind. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you're watching the replay, and we'd love to hear from you, and you can email us at info@lasertech.com. Today, I would like to let you know that our interview has been pre-recorded, so we're recording earlier in the day. Our guest today is quite busy, and this is when we were able to catch up with him. So I would like you to welcome Sergeant Percifield. Is it Percifield or Percifield?
Percifield.
Okay, I say it wrong.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Common mistake. It's okay.
I appreciate the time that you're giving us today. Thank you for being here. Could you introduce yourself to everyone who doesn't know who you are?
Sure. So my name is Kyle Percifield. I'm a sergeant with the Sarpy County Sheriff's Office here in Nebraska. I've been with Sarpy County for about 9 years. I was with another agency for 4 years prior to coming here. I currently am the supervisor for the Special Services Unit at our agency, which encompasses traffic enforcement, our school resource officers, and I also run our crash investigation team. We have our own team just for the sheriff's office here. We've got about 8 members on that. And then I also am the coordinator for our multi-agency team, which encompasses a total of 6 agencies that we all share resources, whether it's physical resources or intellectual resources, to help investigate those serious injury and fatality crashes here in our area. When I'm not busy with all of that, I also am coordinating our traffic task force, as I'm sure I'll explain in a little bit later, but we've increased our enforcement here in Sarpy County due to some tragic crashes that have occurred over the last several years, an increase in crashes. We're trying to do our part to try to help reduce the chances of those things happening. So that's my job in a nutshell. There's several other things that I could go into, but we've only got a short amount of time, so I will not bore everyone.
So Sarpy County, you told me earlier, Interstate 80 goes through there, and you've seen a large increase in crashes. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yep. So I-80 goes through a major thoroughfare in our county. So we obviously have our crashes that happen there, but just overall for our county, I'm sure I-80's placement in it has helped lead to its growth, along with just some good planning by our local officials. But we're the fastest growing county in the state, but we also have the smallest geographic footprint in our county. Our borders have us as the smallest geographic county, but we can't build roadways fast enough in our county, and we can't widen them fast enough. So the strain on our infrastructure is pretty great. So due to that and our growing population, we've seen quite a number of increasing crashes. Our response to that is trying to, one, do good investigations to identify where we may be able to help or mitigate some factors there, but also trying to do what we can in terms of enforcement of the laws. We know that if people are complying with those, the likelihood of those crashes or the number of crashes will usually see an effect as well and start to go down. So we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have and the time that we have to try to curb those and reduce those number of crashes.
Do you find with the combination of the population growth and the infrastructure problems, are these high-speed crashes? Are these low-speed crashes? Are you seeing this in school zones? Where do you see the most?
That's a good question. So we've got quite a variety, actually. We transition pretty quickly. The northern part of our county is pretty urban, and the southern part is pretty rural. And there's a Highway 370, that kind of bisects that. So you get people that once you get to that open area where you have the county roads and highways that can sustain a little bit more of those higher speeds, they're using all of that roadway to get to those speeds and then some. I would say a large number of our fatal crashes have, like a lot of jurisdictions, have speed and alcohol as factors. And then we're, of course, trying to figure out the distracted driving as well, not just cell phones, but I mean, cognitive distracted driving, what they're thinking about. We try to do some good interviews to figure out if there was something else going on in their life, something like that. Whether they were distracted by other people in the car or by the classic way, as most people think, by their cell phones. So I think the combination of the speed, the alcohol, and then some type of distraction. One of those three factors has something to do with every crash that we've got in our county.
Have you noticed a change with COVID? Like, has traffic gone down? Have accidents gone down? What do you feel the trend has been?
For us specifically, of course, right after the pandemic hit about a year ago, we did see a large drop in traffic volume. We did not see the drop in traffic-related fatalities, though. Of course, without doing a scientific study and really diving into the stats, I can't say definitively, but of course, a good guess would have been just that, I mean, they have the open roadway, as I already described. Once we get into that less populated area of our county, we see a lot of those crashes occurring when people can get up to those high speeds. So if you have those areas that aren't normally populated by cars, then people use that roadway to get up to the speed. So while we did see a reduction in traffic numbers, we definitely did not see a reduction in traffic fatalities, at least in our county. And the same goes for our enforcement, our task force, traffic task force. We didn't see a reduction in the number of tickets we were writing or those number of stops that we were making out of those. In fact, it was a little bit easier to find the people violating the law because there seemed to be more of them out on the roadways doing that as well. So COVID was an interesting thing to kind of sit back and do an unscientific study of how traffic flows here and whether it would have an effect. And to be frank, it really didn't affect our numbers at all. We were maintained, sadly, the same trend that we were seeing of the increased number of traffic fatalities.
Yeah, you're not the only department that I've heard that from, which brings a phrase that I never thought I would hear, congestion saves lives. So
It's pretty
it's
accurate. Sadly,
it
I mean,
is
you
accurate,
got
yeah,
the rolling roadblock for you in front of you when you've
right.
got Grandma Ethel slowing you down in front of you. Like it, sometimes that's to their benefit. So
Yeah, but a lot of people drive kind of at the speed of traffic, so to speak. So if everybody's driving a similar speed, you kind of keep pace with that. But when there's no one on the road, you don't have that benchmark to kind of feel the speed of the road.
right.
So people aren't used to watching their speedometers, which is
Apparently not. Like if only there was a thing that told them how fast they were going. Uh,
only.
right.
Right. Okay. So are there any other traffic safety concerns that you're focused on?
Really, it's just, I mean, like I said, back in 2019, we had a pretty significant jump in our traffic fatalities. We were kind of talking earlier, a little over 200% of what we had seen for the previous years. So that really prompted us to try to do something, and that's where that formation of that traffic task force among all of our agencies here in our county formed. So that has really been our strong focus on that. Of course, we're trying to do the other things, when we get traffic complaints, trying to go to those specific residential areas or school zones and help out when we can get with those. But really, our main focus has been on the saturation enforcement to try to encourage people that until they get the roadways widened and better infrastructure in place, we've all got to work together to try to follow the rules of the road to reduce those chances of something tragic happening.
Do you have any stories that really illustrate what you're trying to do?
Um, there's a couple of higher profile cases that have occurred in our county, sadly involving the deaths of children. We had one crash that took the lives of four high school students back in June of 2019. And then just a few months later, we had another one that had four cars involved that two children had died in that crash. And those were kind of the higher profile crashes that really highlighted the need that we had in our county to do something. While all of the loss of life was tragic, and I'm not trying to downplay the loss of life of the others, but those ones just really had a lot of traction, and people could really empathize with how tragic those situations were, and we've kind of used those to help try to get some good to come out of it. And while someone might not see traffic enforcement as a good thing if they're the ones on the receiving end of a citation, we know that what we're doing is for good, and we may have prevented something from occurring down the road that no one's ever going to know the true benefit of what we just did. So yeah, we've had a lot of tragic stories that have come out of it, but the amount of unity that one the community has had around this area, but two that we as law enforcement, as the ones responding to these scenes and going and dealing with the tragedies and dealing with the families and trying to get the answers, knowing that we can do something to try to help curb it so that we aren't having the same conversation with another family in a week, a month, a year. I think that brings us a lot of peace, that we're the things that we think that we can't control. It feels like we have some control, at least, of being able to slow people down and bring them to have some awareness of the safety that we all need to have on the roadways.
Right. Do you have other organizations helping you out? Like, is MAD active in your county?
Yeah, so MAD, they're a great resource. I was just on a call with them the other day. We have Project Nightlife is an organization here in the Omaha area. Omaha Police head that up, but that's aimed to curb impaired driving and specifically in the younger generations. The Nebraska Office of Highway Safety, or the Highway Safety Office through our Department of Transportation, has grant funded our traffic task force. They gave us $30,000 for just a short amount of time when we were kind of proving the concept back in late 2019, early 2020, and then we did a project grant with them and got $100,000 awarded for overtime. So all of this traffic task force stuff that I keep talking about, a lot of that is overtime. That one, we have deputies and officers that are willing to work it, but two, it helps offset some of the costs that our agency is. While we're more than happy to spend the money to try to help save lives, it really helps kind of boost the project and to make it more of a forefront when we don't have to worry about where we're getting the money to pay to do these extra efforts.
Right. Now, you're going to use some of that money to buy Lasertech products, right?
That one I specifically cannot use for that, but I've got other
Ah,
things that we're trying. So we'll see if I can beg for enough money in the budget next year.
right. Do you have a favorite Lasertech product?
With our crash team, we just recently, a few years ago, switched over to the True Pulse 200 with True Angle, and then the True Point 300 for scene measurements. The True Pulse with True Angle is the one that we're using the most, just because it can do those long distance shots. But it was what we used to replace our total station that was pretty aged, and we're having some issues with keeping battery life up with it being a rechargeable battery. What we really enjoy about the LTI system is just the one, it's easy to use. You have a tablet. Everyone's used to touching an app on their phone and interfacing with that. But just the ease of use to set it up. If the batteries are low, it's two AA's in the True Angle, one CR123 in the True Pulse, and it's a very simple change. There's not this, well, did someone bring the charging cord? How are we going to get power out in the middle of a highway? Something like
Right.
that. So it's made it the ease of use with it. If someone's used a LiDAR, they can use this, and the outputs from the software, the Quick Map software, is pretty easy to use, and it exports in 7 different formats that you can use in pretty much whatever software that you have. We personally use Ferrozone 3D for our mapping,
Right.
and we got that through Lasertech back when that was who you guys were selling. But anyway, we love the product a lot. It helps us out in clearing the scene quickly, just with some of the features of the product and the app itself, and we know that it's going to work every time.
Right. So, you said you've been using it for maybe a couple of years. How much faster do you clear scenes now that you're using the TruePulse 200?
So our average clearance time is somewhere between, especially for oh, as bad as it sounds, a normal fatal crash that happens on usually a highway that's usually busier when we have to close down everything. It's usually about an hour and a half to 3, depending on how big of a scene that we're shooting and all the other stuff. And I guess we have to keep in mind that it's not just the mapping that we're doing on the scene. We're having a lot of other evidence gathering and stuff that we're doing. So that might not be the best representation to say that it takes 3 hours to use your product, keeping the roadway
Right.
closed. It's definitely not
Right.
the case. It only moves as quick as we use it. But we've definitely noticed with how reliable it is, that we aren't spending a ton of time setting the device up and figuring out how to use it and making sure batteries are charged and all that. So it's definitely reduced our time out on the field, mainly at half the time in stress of just trying to get the product to work, because it works every time.
That sounds like a really huge pain point for you
Uh,
guys.
well, and for cops, I mean, it's the total station is a surveying piece of equipment. Not that we can't learn
Right.
to use it, but I mean, if you're not using it every day, sometimes you lose that. Whereas the LTI products, we're using LiDARs every day. We know how to use this device, and then once you've received a pretty small amount of training on the LTI system and you understand the basics of how it works, how and understanding that it runs just like a total station in terms of the measurements that it's getting, but it just makes it that much easier for us to teach new cops how to use this stuff when you're not trying to teach them how to use a surveying equipment to do a cop's job.
Right, right. So you find it's fairly easy to train people
Yeah,
to be proficient. That's good to
absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you map every crash? You said you have quite a few. So do you map every one of them?
Yes, I mean our philosophy, we maybe go a bit more overboard than some other agencies, but I mean we only have one shot at gathering that evidence and keeping it pristine. So we would much rather spend the hour out there mapping it and having that evidence, and then possibly never needing it because say someone injuries aren't that bad and they end up pulling through and surviving. Like we're that good on all fronts. We don't need the data, but we have it just in case someone were to ask for it, and the person survives. So we will generally go out and map. If we're getting called out, we're going to be doing some mapping of the scene to ensure that we've gathered all the data necessary.
Right. And if it's easy, then you're not worried about, oh, do we have to? Is it worth it? That kind of thing, because it's just, you said it was fairly easy to get set up and get going.
Absolutely.
Right. So, do you have any problems mapping at night?
Nope. The really the main thing is just, I mean, within even with the LiDAR, if you're doing speed enforcement, you realize you have to turn down the brightness of the viewfinder because sometimes that'll wash you out. But I mean, no, we've not had any issues. You wouldn't have any more issues with the specifically the true angle and
Mhm.
the true pulse than you would with any other total station because you need light to illuminate whatever it is that you're shooting. So we have poles and prisms that we have from LTI and from previously bought, but I mean, you've got a strobe that you can put in there, shine a flashlight on the prism, and you can see it just fine through the viewfinder. So nope, we haven't had any issues.
Cool. Do you do any crush measurement?
So we have done some damage profiling, not so much with that true pulse, but with the true point, since it's smaller, a little bit easier to set up on a smaller tripod, especially normally you're getting a little bit lower on the vehicle. It's not shooting something that's 7 feet in the air. So we've used the true point with it, and it has a dot, the laser that comes out, and you can see specifically on the car where you're shooting it. So we'll do a model around the car, and then you can overlay that on a scale drawing of it in Faro Zone, and then you can do your crush measurements that way and do some good damage profiling as well.
And do you find that's helpful for you?
Yeah, especially if you're trying to figure out how the car is connected, or if you're trying to do a good demonstrative of here's how the car is connected on the scene. If you've got a accurate measurement of the damage, being able to overlay that in Faro Zone really gives a good top-down view for, say, the layperson on a jury or a county attorney or whomever to really understand how you've done what you've done, especially if you're using it to figure out some angles using some different math and other nerd ways to help solve what occurred in a crash.
Right. Um, so you are a subject matter expert because you do spend time in court and presenting. Have you found what we term the CSI effect has been a huge problem for you? Is it better to have all of this data so that you can show it?
Yeah, I think the data is good for a number of reasons. One, it just shows that we were thorough. We don't want to just go and use the thumb measurement test to figure out what happened. We want to know what occurred, and we want the person who is either the survivor of the crash or their families of, say, some deceased from the crash. We want them to understand what happened as well. It's not just for us; it's for jury. It's for everyone to know to answer the why as much as we possibly can. So when we're able to gather the data easily, but then also explain it. Obviously, court testimony is only as good as the person providing it. So being able to explain to someone how easily, like this is shooting a laser out and it's measuring how much time it took to get back. Sorry, ignore that phone call. To explain to them how this device works. It's so much easier to explain this because we use it every day and we know exactly how it's doing it. So when we do that, when it seems like they grasp it pretty well. I don't speak to the jurors, obviously, one-on-one, but it seems like you get a lot of head nods and of understanding when we're explaining how it is we went about the process that we did to explain it. So it's definitely a lot easier to explain this. I've had to explain a total station on the stand, and that was not as easy as
Wow. Yeah.
explaining how this works. When you use the term theodolite, most people are very confused by that. So while this uses the same type of function, it's a little bit easier to explain.
Right. Because they understand point and shoot and laser
Right.
dots and
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I thank you for joining me today. I've got one last question. It's more of a human interest question that I like to end with. What is the best piece of advice you've ever heard?
Oh God, you didn't tell me about this
Oh
before.
no.
This is for me, it would probably be remember why you started. Specifically in law enforcement, it's a very easy rabbit hole to go down to be cynical and to think that we aren't liked by most people and that maybe cut some corners to try to end this case quickly. I'm done with it. It's obvious what happened. But we all got started in this job for a reason. We were all excited when we got that phone call saying that you have this. So especially as of within the last year and how much criticism law enforcement has had, I think that we have to remind ourselves of why we did this and that the vast majority of people do still like us and that the vast majority of us are good trying to do the right thing out here, whether it's for the suspect or for the victim. And we just want to help. So I think if people just remember why they started whatever it is that they're doing, that will hopefully carry them through when they're having some of those tough days that makes you think of why am I even out here messing with this? So
I think that's very good advice. Do you have any thoughts to leave with anyone about traffic safety?
um, wear your seatbelt. Obviously, we know that those save lives, but I mean, for the average public out there, it's just slow down and just pay attention. It's so easy. We're all just as guilty as I'm just as guilty as anyone else out there. But if we reduce the amount of times that we're doing those things, speeding, looking at our phone, whatever, if we reduce the amount of times that we're knowingly doing those, but we think that it's not going to happen to us, so we just continue because that's just stuff we see on the news. If we reduce the amount of times that we do that, we know that we're going to reduce the number of tragedies that we're responding to. So I think if we just have that real um, true talk moment of, yeah, this could happen to me. I could absolutely get T-boned at the next intersection or T-bone someone else because I wasn't paying attention. If we knowingly reduce those times, then I think that the roads across the country could be safer.
I agree. I have a teenager, and we find ourselves telling them, sure, you've done it so many times and nothing's happened, but it only takes one time to make a disaster.
Right.
So, yeah, you
Exactly.
have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I also would like to thank everyone else who's watched us today. If you want to be alerted about upcoming Tuesday at 2 events, you can click the like button and follow Lasertech's page on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can click subscribe to follow our channel and click the notification bell to be alerted to new videos that are uploaded. Um, so we'll see everyone again next week. And until then, keep measuring and building safe communities. Thank you.